Welcome to From a Southside Point of View. I've got my, as always, co-host with me, Josh Nelson from Sox Machine. Josh, I would really like to talk about Mike Clevenger with you, but right now we're going to talk a little bit about the season finale of Andor, which I am dying to talk with you more about. Let's just get right off to it and get into it. What did you think of the final episode?
I thought it was fantastic, and we'll break it down here. But the themes and what they have been trying to accomplish with this particular season, I didn't know what direction that they were really going. If this was truly 12 episodes about Cassian Andor, when you watch the first 2 episodes of this season, but now that you've completed the season, it's much more than that. This is the story of how the rebellion was born, and it feeds into A New Hope and the movies and stories that we Star Wars nerds and diehard fans have come to love over the decades. And I guess you could even say generation now, as that much time has passed. They did a phenomenal job, especially from episodes 3, beyond 3. And the monologue, which we'll talk about, was brilliant. And yeah, just everything about this episode and how they were able to complete this transition when the Empire really tightens its grip on society. They just did a fantastic job of portraying what life is like under the Empire and how terrible it was.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And the way that they kind of brought in a lot of different they brought in a lot of different areas of the rebellion without doing a lot of fan service. And they created some new characters, as our guy Matt Ramsey in the comments is mentioning, Vel Sartha. I thought everyone who was in that small rebel pack was really good. And I think the Nemec piece is something that's going to kind of continue to thread through the series, as will Marva, and we'll get to Marva in a little bit. But first, I want to start with a character who we thought was going to be a big part of this, has played a role for sure, but Mon Mothma is very much secondary to the overall story. But we have been tracing this piece of her financial dealings and trying to fund the rebellion through her own family fortune, and the fact that we all thought the Empire was listening in, and then it's all confirmed in this moment that the driver is listening to everything that they say. And she decides, I know how I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to throw Perrin under the bus because he sucks. What did you think about this part, Josh?
I thought it was a very interesting strategy by Mon Mothma, and I think pretty convincing that she did a good job convincing the driver that there is some money issues with Mon Mothma, but it is to cover her husband's gambling debts, which evidently gambling is illegal in Coruscant. We can call it Wisconsin, as we live in Chicago, where gambling is legal. And Perrin's gambling where he shouldn't be. At least that's the story Mon Mothma wants to portray and get into the Empire, or at least the ISB specifically's minds, is that don't pay attention to me funding a rebellion. No, I am trying to shift money around counts to pay off my deadbeat husband's gambling debts. It's an interesting and I think convincing strategy.
She even goes as far as to say, I don't want to know where the money came from, to make it look like he might be the one doing this. And I think it's additionally a good strategy, because it sounds like once the driver goes and talks to the ISB agent, which is hilarious because it's the same guy that messed up everything in Ferrix. Now he's going to have this on his plate where he's going to mess this up. Is that I think she's planning like, okay, they're going to come after me politically with this, and then they're going to look for the information, and it's not actually going to be there, right? Like there's going to be no evidence of Perrin gambling, because he's not. He vehemently denies it. And he doesn't seem like a guy that would lie about that. He would be like, I feel like he would be like, I get to gamble. Like, why shouldn't I get to gamble? Right. Like, so I'm pretty convinced that he's not doing it, and that she knows he's not, but this is a great way to throw everybody off. and
Mhm.
I think that this will be kind of her mode through the next season of like kind of just you know pointing people in the wrong direction to get away with everything that she's doing until she can't anymore, until she just gives up on even trying to have that facade, and just and we know when that's going to happen. We know that when there's the I want to say it's the Gorman massacre, uh we know that that's going to happen at some point. They're leading up to that, but I think there's going to be a lot of this misdirection that she's going to go with, which is really interesting. Now, covering up her money trail is this is one part of it. The second part is that she actually goes through with the introduction, we should say, but we definitely know that it's going to turn to a proposal. Josh, this is some Game of Thrones shit.
Yep.
What'd you think of this?
That's the first thing that was the first thing that came to my mind, is that this is Game of Thrones. And what's good. So one common theme, especially later in this season of Andor, is what are people sacrificing? And with Mon Mothma, she is going to sacrifice her family. And with this proposal, she is going to marry off her only child, her daughter, to a criminal lord's son.
Yeah.
And then she is going to give that up. And she's going to lead the rebellion. And that's what her sacrifice will be. She'll be sacrificing her family. She's throwing her husband under the bus, and he will be under heavy ISP investigation and meddling in his affairs. So ruining his life. We don't know if she's going to be ruining her daughter's life quite yet, but she's 13 years old, and she is going to be betrothed to this 14-year-old son of the thug that Mon Mothma called.
Yeah, he's the heir apparent to like a mob boss, right? I mean, like it reminded me of like in mob movies where the family or the parents see the child going into this life, right? You think of things like Bronx Tale, and you think of even Henry Hill's parents in Goodfellas, like where they're appalled by this scenario, and she's just going like, let's throw the kid into this. But Cornsy's comment is great. Let's be honest, she's not sacrificing much because her family's awful. It's true. They definitely built up the family to be terrible. But the thing is too, like, what she's doing with the daughter is weird, because the daughter seems to want that life.
Yes.
She's it's as much of it being like she's throwing her daughter into a mob family. She's also doing the parent thing of like, oh, you want to do this? Go ahead and do this. This is what you want. Yeah. Go ahead. You'll figure it out. But ruining her life. She's she's gonna be the she's Carmela Soprano now. Like, I mean, that's where her life is going. So I don't know. I was really surprised to see this at the end, because I thought the previous part with Perrin was her way of getting out of doing this. But it seems like she's just going like, she's spraying to all fields. She's like, I'm making sure my money trail is okay. And no matter who has to get run over by it.
Right. Because I think ultimately she needs a way to get all of the money, not just make sure that the last ledger that seems to be off is looking good. Eventually, she's going to need all of her wealth taken out of the bank. And she's going to need the criminal underlord. I should say the criminal underworld to assist her with that. And it's been well documented, and a lot of it's not canon, but that could always change. It can become canon on even the battles between the criminal underworld and the Empire that surface during this time. But yeah, you're right. I think it's a good way of putting it. Mon Mothma's covering all fields right now, trying to throw off ISB from the scent, and at the same time ensuring that she gets the money where she needs it to be.
Now,
Sorry, daughter.
now speaking of which, we're touching on the Underworld. We're gonna get to season 2 predictions at the end, but man, I've got one here for that. So we'll get back to it. But before we get into that, we got to get into the meat of this episode, which was Marva's speech and then the ensuing riot after. But Marva's speech, and not just her speech, but what is conveyed from Brasso to Andor is just extremely moving in terms of just great acting moments in this series. But also, like, you can feel this type of rebellion just in like everyday life, in the way that she talks about the things that you like, your freedom's being taken away slowly, and you're just sleeping. Like, that is something that, like, I think everyone can relate to. And like, it's so perfectly put in this that I loved it. But I think, to me, the line that is like most important to what we know about Cassian and what we are yet to know about him in future season is when Brasso tells her that he says, I believe, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's, I love you more than anything you can do, or that you can do wrong. And I mean, that's his whole thing in Rogue One, right? Like, the fact that he has done so many terrible things in the name of the rebellion. And this, you kind of wonder when you hear that in Rogue One, how's he been justifying this all this time, and then you hear that line and you're like, yeah, that could make him kind of just make it work in his mind of like, well, my mom would want me to do this.
Right.
But she is a mother to a lot in that town, and she's the sister or daughter of Ferrix. Josh, what did you think about this speech and like just the shift that it makes in the show?
So there was a good column in The Wired about this particular monologue, and it's so different because we don't get this in Star Wars. Like, if you think about it, there's great one-liners in Star Wars, but can you remember a great monologue in Star Wars, Terezi?
Not really. I mean, there's, I think, like, if any of them are, it's maybe Rogue One, and even those are pretty short.
Right.
There's not
Jyn Erso, right?
Yeah, like those little moments, but and they're mostly conversational too. I mean, there's the thing with when she gives the speech on the transport, but even that's short. And then the other pieces are conversational where she's arguing back and forth. So, like, no, I don't remember. I mean, the Emperor gives a few, but they're not quite motivational.
No. Again, it's a bunch of one-liners, and that could be to the talent of writers, or it could just be the creative flow of Star Wars. And even Dave Filoni is under this type of criticism as well, because he's been doing a lot of Star Wars content. We haven't seen it in The Mandalorian. It just doesn't happen. But here we have a risk taken in Andor. And you have Marva, a terrific actress, delivering this speech to incite a riot as like her last dying wish. And it's just so well done, and it's so well presented, and it's so believable in what happens in the next actions, in which the Empire tries to throw a coat over the projection and gets smacked in the face with the brick. We did call that last
I
episode.
knew the brick was coming. I didn't think it would be as simple as like Brasso beating the shit out of people with a brick, but like, I'm glad it was. I'm glad that's how they did it.
Yeah. And this is a really important moment, because it obviously sets the rebellion off in Ferrix, and I think in season 2 we'll learn more what happens at Ferrix. I don't think anything good will happen to Ferrix, as the lessons that we're learning from the Empire. but it's such a memorable moment, and I'm okay with Star Wars taking more risks like this. And they're gonna have to do this in Ahsoka with Grand Admiral Thrawn, because now I'm trying to remember as far as the catalog of all Star Wars content. And when Thrawn spoke in Rebels, Terezi, you listened as the audience. It
Yeah.
wasn't something that you got distracted by your phone or you looked away. Just the message of his monologues, the delivery from the voice actor, of the lines themselves. You paid attention. So maybe that's the next type of monologue that we get is from Grand Admiral Thrawn in
That would be
Ahsoka.
awesome. That would be awesome. And he's for those of you who haven't read the books, the Rebels gave a version of him. Of course, that's a version that it's in a cartoon that they have to be, child friendly and things. But he is an extremely deep and strategic thinker, and to the point where like he can figure out how to dismantle entire governments. And pit governments against each other to fight wars that he wants them to fight. Like, so he's going to be a very interesting character. And yeah, I would love to see him deliver a speech like this to either people that he's trying to control or to Ezra. Like him giving like a long dissertation to Ezra of why he does what he does could be for Ezra, who's been someone who has been teetering between the light and dark side in his youth. It could be a very interesting confrontation if he's a lot, I'm sure they have time to talk and wherever the heck they went. But back to this speech, I think, and Josh, to your point, like this is, you don't hear this, and I think this show is going in the direction where you will hear things like this, which makes me wonder how the Mon Mothma speech is going to go down in season 2, which will be after the Gorman massacre. It's teased in Rebels. I don't even remember if you get even pieces of it, but it's what makes her go on the run. So I'm going to guess it's going to be a speech along these lines. It would be excellent if like she had gotten a hold of this somehow, like if this becomes like public throughout the galaxy, and if she uses some lines from this, I think that would be extremely effective. But speaking of effective, this speech was absolutely effective in starting a riot in Ferrix. And my guy Mini Pac here, his father is obviously the key to this whole season. His father was the one that had the phone line to Luthen, that Bix would use, and then he also is the one who's captured. So he's captured and then hanged in the middle of a town. This parallels directly with what happened to Cassian, and then Cassian goes and attacks some stormtroopers, as we see in like a bit of a flashback. He goes to prison for that, we assume. This goes a little bit differently. He's he's a little more prepared. He builds a bomb and then throws it into a bunch of stormtroopers alongside of this whole riot going down. I mean,
Right.
So Josh, what did you think about the way that they did the fight? Any things that jumped out at you as you watched it?
So as someone that has not been involved in many riots in my lifetime, I do not have first-person experience to describe what is going on, but based on just real life examples that have been documented on film or through television, through news, is that they made this feel very real. The way that the riot was set up with the guards, with the shields, and the local townsmen attacking pretty much, the stormtroopers, or in this case, the police, and then one chucking a bomb over and blowing out windows and killing people. And then you have Deidre, who gets caught in the middle and is just absolutely surrounded. And the way they just captured the chaos and the violence that is going on, that this is something that you cannot control, just shows an example that the Empire so desperately wants to have a firm grasp on everything that's going on in the galaxy. But here, in this particular situation, we see what happens to them when that grasp is broken, and they unravel very quickly, and things get out of hand very quickly. And for those that are in charge, they are put into positions where they don't know what to do and they are exposed. And I think this is a great example of the riot at Ferrix of what we're going to see across the galaxy on what happens when you actually do challenge the Empire.
Yeah, I really felt it, and this is a weird thing to reference, but something I thought about was in I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Warriors. It's 1970s gang movie, but their leader in that gathers all the gangs together and is like talking about how many of them there are, and then how few cops there are, right? And it's a similar thought here. Like, yeah, you're outgunned by them, but there's so many more people. This is your territory, this is your land. Like, you know how to fight here, and you can take that, you could take them out, right? And I think that's the interesting thing in this is, like, once everyone is motivated to this, the Empire is vastly outnumbered. Like, the end is as many flaws as as the Rise of Skywalker had. Like, at that ending is like when they are vastly outnumbered, when just the people show up, right? Like, they're like, what navy is this? It's just like, this is just the people have come. Like, they're tired of your shit again. And so yeah, I really like that. I think one thing that is sticking with me from this and watching it again is that Luthen, Vel, and Cinta are all there.
Yes.
The leaders of what we know as of the rebellion, and they don't do shit. Luthen just like kind of backs. Luthen is not in on this, right? You would think if you were that, like, Saw Gerrera would have been in there, right? He would have got in the mix. He might lose a couple legs from it, like eventually, but I think, like, it was a little bit telling of Luthen's character for him to not participate in that and really be one-minded, and he's just trying to eliminate Cassian in this, despite what he's what he makes to be his purpose in life, seeing it in the flesh and not participating. I don't know, what did you think about that?
So I think Luthen, he's really inspired by Avas Speech. You could tell just based on his facial reactions, listening to the speech, that this is kind of coming to plan for him. This is what he wanted. How much of a fighter is he? I'm not quite sure yet. He can defend himself. We do know that he can defend himself, but he is the mastermind. Do masterminds fight on the front line? No,
Yeah.
they do not. And
I mean,
maybe he had a change of heart, and that's why he walked away. And went back to his ship.
I get you on the mastermind. Like, he values himself too much to put himself in harm's way. I just think, like, that's maybe the difference between a guy like him and Saw Gerrera. Like, Saw Gerrera would definitely be involved in that, which is weird that Saw backed off of the Krieger thing. But it sounds like the Krieger thing went ahead of schedule, if I understood that correctly. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on in season 2 is Lonnie's progression, because it sounds like he might have done that on purpose. I do want to get this comment though. Big fan of the dude getting tossed off the clock tower. The time grappler was an awesome character already, and then you got him in this episode banging whatever
anvil.
that big metal thing is that he does to start the proceedings 2 hours early. And then, yeah, you come to fuck with him, he's going to kick you right off of that tower. That was spectacular. Like there's a lot of times we talk about how poorly some of the Imperial administrators and stormtroopers are at their job, like how bad they are at their job. And this one was top notch. Like it's just like, yeah, send one guy up there and have him climb up the ladder and make himself very obvious that he's coming up there, so he could get kicked off. It's just beautiful, Imperial work. I love it so much.
Did they use a tank to blow up the Anvil Tower, the Watchtower?
Did they?
That's what I was expecting, but I don't think it happened.
I don't think they ended up blowing it up. No. I still think that guy would have lived if they did it. I don't. I for some reason that guy is unkillable for me. He's like R2D2. Like he should just be in everything forever. I did have one question for you though in the riot, and you touched on it for a second. But if these two would have kissed, would you have vomited? This was just a supremely weird moment. But Josh, what did you think about this?
This whole storyline is really weird. And if you're asking me what is the weakness of Andor, it's Cyril. And I guess I don't know why his story is continuing unless there is going to be some type of love interest that's going on between these two. I think it's a bit far-fetched and really unnecessary. However, Deidre's path may fall into Cyril's path, in which when she gets back to the ISB and reports back what happens at Ferrix, I think she's going to get demoted and or even removed from the ISB because she's not accomplishing what she was set out to do. And now you have incited a riot at Ferrix. We have citizens dead. We have troopers dead. This is another mess. This is the second mess at Ferrix. That's why I think we've got bad news coming from Ferrix in a moment. But if she gets fired or dismissed, she may have this vendetta still of trying to chase down Andor, and you may get this partnership between these two that if the rebellion is working in the shadows of the Empire and the Empire refuses to pay attention to what's going on in their own darkness, maybe we can.
Yeah, that's a good call on her getting in trouble for this, because they even mention it in when they're talking to her. She's complaining about how they handled the Krieger situation,
right?
And her boss basically says, go find the Axis and do something useful. Like that's what you're there for. So she doesn't find him, but she's also the one who authorized that they let them have the funeral procession, which leads to a massive riot. So she's going to definitely be in trouble. And like, is there going to be like this growing faction of weird Imperials that feel like Cassian Andor has ruined their life and like are after him? Like I don't know if that works. Like it's a little weird.
It is. Again, that's why if I have to find a weak point in Andor, it's this relationship that's on the screen.
I like them each individually, though. As Cyril is just such a psychopath that I am intrigued by him. And Dedra is again like someone that you were rooting for at the beginning of the season, until you realized, her goals in life are pretty horrifying. But the interplay of the two is bordering on creepy. I'm interested to see what they do with it in season 2. But speaking of which, let's talk about season 2 and like what are your kind of predictions for season 2. Also, I don't know that we needed the scene after, like the post-credit scene, but I loved it. I was happy to see this post-credit scene. I thought it was interesting, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But give me some of your predictions for season 2.
I think Ferrex gets bombarded. I think what we're going to see from the Empire is getting really aggressive with tying things down. That if a settlement like Ferrex is going to rebel like this and incite riots and have this type of violence, they're going to give the impression that, oh, the Empire is leaving, we won. And then here comes a Star Destroyer hovering over your settlement and blows it up pretty much. Very similar to Jeddah that we saw in Rogue One. But obviously in Rogue One, Jeddah is used as a test with the Star Destroyer. And the Star Destroyer is not, I'm sorry, the Death Star. The Death Star is not ready yet for Ferrex. But that's what I am predicting that starts in season 2, is that our rebel friends are going to find out that Ferrex just got bombarded. And now things are going to get a lot more dangerous for Luthen and his crew.
Yeah, and it's a way that the Empire will force people to not take these types of actions, right? This will be the lesson. Like, oh, they started this riot, the riot wasn't even successful, and now they got blasted to hell, right? And that's the idea behind the Death Star, right? So I don't think I agree with you. It won't be the Death Star because it's not complete yet, but like it's going to be similar. It's probably be a Star Destroyer come in and just like lay waste to Ferrex. Like they'll think they won because they'll evacuate all their people, and then you'll find out why they evacuated all their people, right? And like, so yeah, that's a good call. I think and the reason I want to put up the Death Star here is because, you know, we kind of thought to ourselves all season, like, wait, what is he making in this prison, right? Like, what are they making? And I think everyone kind of thought like, yeah, it might be Death Star. I still love the idea that it was just pieces to keep that facility going. I think that would have been a little more daunting, but it's part of the Death Star, and I think that this might be a theme for Cassian, and that at every point of his life, the Death Star was looming over him. And so I think in season 2, what we're going to get is we're going to find out what was happening on Kenari. And so as he was a child, and what was what was happening on the planet, why everyone was dead, all these things. And I have a feeling it's going to be the beginnings of either the Death Star or the group that is creating the Death Star, right? Like, so there's that group of scientists that are involved in this, with Galen Erso's one of them. But it was interesting. I was rewatching Rogue One, and the emblems that they have on their coats, like the scientists and Galen included, are less like Imperial ones and a little more like the Separatist logo. And I'm wondering if maybe I just misinterpreted the logos on the scientists at the beginning that we're going to that planet as Separatist logos, and they were actually the science faction of the Empire, going to either mine, like maybe they were mining Kyber from that planet and it blew up, right? Like that's like that would make sense, or they were mining something for a super weapon, right? Like, so I have a feeling we're going to get back to Kenari in season 2. I don't think that storyline is over, even though I think we might have, it might be true that his sister's gone, right? Like,
well, to that point, in that same article in Wired, Diego Luna, who plays Cassian Andor, is hinting that story is not done going to season 2. So, well, maybe they do pick it up. Maybe he's just teasing us, but he is suggesting that the hunt for his sister is not quite over.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'd love to see how that turns out. I do want to see what happens with Bix and Brasso on whatever planet they go to, and how, because it's good that they got off of that planet because you're right, it's going to get destroyed. Then a crazier prediction, Josh, a little bit out there in prediction world, but I want to go this way. We're starting to get into the underworld, right? So we're gonna have Davo, and he's going to be now, the father of the father of Mon Mothma's daughter,
Yep.
or the father-in-law of Mon Mothma's daughter. And I think that if we get into the underworld a little bit more, there's a person that is floating around in the underworld at this time, and in the comics, I believe, is going after the Empire themselves, and that's Kira.
Yes.
So I could see a path to having Kira show up in season 2, and especially because it sounds like the way that they're going to do season 2 is going to be 1-year arcs. Like, again, we're going to do 3-episode arcs, but each year will be 1 year all the way leading up to Rogue One. So there could be an arc, like there might be characters that only appear for an arc, and you could have an arc like that. And I think that she'd be enough of a important character to not feel like it's fan service and to make sense. But it would also just, I think people would love it.
Yeah, so you're hiring Emilia Clarke to do a 3-episode arc,
right?
Is what you're suggesting? Yeah, she's currently shooting Secret Wars right now for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So she's entering the MCU. I do think it makes a lot of sense, and I agree with you that you're going to need more of the criminal underworld, because a lot of what they're also doing, in a way, assists the rebellion, but the rebellion is doing it for completely different reasons, where the criminal underworld is doing it for personal profit. That's all they care about.
The motives are different, but
Right.
the goals are the same. And I think that that's how it could come into play. And it could be that Mon Mothma finds out about something that they're trying to do, and lets Luthen know, or lets Saw know, and there's a kind of an assist in like something that they're trying to pull off. Again, might be horrible motives behind it, but it might further the rebellion. And I think that that's the kind of thing that, like, you need to see them try different things and fail, or go down a path that they don't want to go down, and realize, I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think those things have to happen, and I think that it makes sense in this show to show some of those things.
I agree. I like that crazy prediction. Are we? I don't think we're going to get any Jedi.
I hope not.
Are we going to? Let me see here. I'm thinking here. Who else? I don't think we're going to see Darth Vader.
No, probably. I mean, the only way you see Vader or Tarkin or something is if they really get into the Death Star construction. But I think they might shy away from that. I think it's known, right? Like, I mean, like, there's an idea of how that all went down, and Rogue One gets into enough of it, I think. So I honestly, I don't want to. I love Darth Vader, incredibly great character, but I think we could do without it. Any Jedi, any lightsabers in this series. Like, I think it diminishes the storyline when you get into like that kind of thing, because it's very much about the people as opposed to about the special powers and things like that.
Do we get a young Jyn Erso?
So yeah, that's interesting, because at that time she would be away from Saw Gerrera, so I think that happens right before.
Well, if you're doing 1-year arcs,
yeah,
like, I guess it depends on just how many years she separated from Saw before we see her in prison.
So she separates at 16. I think she's 21 in the show, so it's like right before, or she's 21 in Rogue One, I think. So it's like right before the show starts, which makes me wonder if when Saw says that he like people were starting to get suspicious and wanted to use her as a hostage, like if it was Luthen that he was protecting Jin from. So that's how I think maybe you can make it work, right? Like if Saw continues to try and hide the fact that Jin is Galen Erso's daughter, and then there might at least be mention of her, and if there is, then maybe it makes sense to show where she's at. I think that could be interesting. Do you think we would see any other senators? Do you think like Bail Organa's got to show up at some point in this? In season 2?
Okay, good point. Yeah, I assume that Jimmy Spitz is going to be making an appearance here at some point, maybe towards the end of season 2, but at some point, yes, I think you're right. We're going to see Bail Organa.
Yeah, and so that, then that starts to go down a path of like, what other rebels do we see, right? Like, so Bail's got that whole contingent on that side that he's been keeping up with. So he's got the Ahsoka, and he's got the people on the Ghost. So like everyone from Star Wars Rebels. Are any of them going to make their way into the show? Like, are we going to see like a younger Hera?
Okay,
in the show. I guess it's about the same age as she would be in Rebels. So like they would all be around. Like they could do a job with them. I don't know if we get into that because it's a little bit too much of a crossover. But like I think that could be. They're definitely around. Leia's around too. I wonder if they're going to get into any of that in season 2.
I kind of like that. I do. I would enjoy seeing Hera because we will eventually in Ahsoka, but yeah, I wouldn't mind more cameos, but we didn't get a lot of fan service in season 1, and if they're going to continue this trend, I don't know if we're going to see any of these cameos in season 2. As far as the fan service type, it's going to have to make sense into the arc. Saul Guerrero has made sense in the story arcs. That's why we see Forrest Whitaker in Andor. That's why I think a 3-episode arc with Kira bringing Emilia Clarke back into the fold makes a lot of sense. And we've seen Bail Organa already in Kenobi. It would still make sense if he is here in season 2 of Andor. So I like those predictions. Some of our other predictions may be way off, but I can't wait for season 2, Treasy.
I'm with you. And then I can't wait to break down every episode with you as usual. But yeah, this has been a great show. I think everyone who's stuck around past the first few episodes has had great things to say about this show. And I really look forward to season 2. As you know, tons of different directions that we just talked about that the show could go into. I hope I'm surprised and it doesn't do any of those, and it just like gives me something brand new that I hadn't thought of, much like this season did. So with that, we're gonna call it a day. But man, it's been great breaking these down with you, and I think we got Mandalorian in February. So we'll be back for that. And in the meantime, you could, of course, catch Josh at socksmachine.com or on Twitter at socksmachine_Josh. You could always find me from the108.com and at Chirizi on Twitter. And if you enjoy these, we did a whole bunch of these. So go back and watch them on the YouTube channel. I think you'll enjoy them all. You could see how incredibly wrong we were on some things and how close we came on how the riot was going to go down last week. But we will see you very soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been a great season.
Yes. Bye everyone.